So the federal government has shut down. Again, you hear that headline all the time, right? But what does it actually mean? Like for you, for your travel plans, your mail, even the food on your neighbor's table? Well, in this explainer, we're gonna cut right through all that political noise and get to the real-world impact. Let's get into it.
All right, so let's just dive right in. It is so easy to hear government shutdown and just, tune it out. It sounds like a bunch of political noise coming out of DC, right? But the thing is, the effects are super real. They can ripple out and touch pretty much everything, from that vacation you've been planning to the food assistance programs that people right in your community rely on.
Okay, so to get our heads around this, we're gonna break it down into 5 key parts. First, what a shutdown actually is. Then, what essential services keep going. We'll also look at the services that are really feeling the strain. Then, the big one, the impact on people. And finally, we'll wrap up with what happens next.
All right, Section 1. Let's just start with the basics. What exactly is a government shutdown?
So, at its core, it's pretty simple. It's a funding gap. Congress can't agree on how to spend the money, so the money stops flowing. And when that happens, all the non-essential parts of the federal government have to temporarily shut their doors. Now, that phrase, non-essential, is super important. Because yeah, some critical things do keep running. But as we're about to see, that word essential comes with a huge catch.
Okay, next up, let's talk about what stays on. What are those essential services that keep going even when, technically, the government is closed for business?
First up, and this is good news for anyone waiting on a package, the mail keeps moving. The U.S. Postal Service is actually self-funded, for the most part. That means it doesn't really depend on that annual budget battle in Congress. So yeah, your letters, your bills, your online shopping, it'll all keep coming, business as usual.
And hey, if you've got a flight booked, you can breathe a little easier, for now. Air traffic controllers, most TSA agents, they're all considered essential. And that means they have to stay on the job to keep our airports running and, safe. But remember that catch I mentioned? This is a big part of it. Being essential doesn't mean you get paid on time.
What about things like Social Security and VA benefits? Well, the checks themselves, they are expected to keep going out. But, and this is a big but, the hiccup is going to be with customer service. Think about it. A lot of the administrative staff are sent home. So if you're trying to process a new application, or you just need to talk to a real person to get a question answered, good luck. That could take way, way longer.
All right, so that's what stays on. Now let's get into the services that are either shut down completely or put under some serious strain. And this is where, for a lot of people, the impact starts to get very, very real.
So are you planning a trip overseas anytime soon? Well, here's the deal with passports. The agencies will technically stay open, but a lot of their employees will be furloughed, meaning they're sent home. And what does that mean for you? A much slower process. So if you need a renewal, you're definitely going to want to plan for some longer than usual wait times.
This is a really important one. Some crucial nutrition programs, they face different levels of risk. Take WIC, for example. That's the program that supports women, infants, and children. It is in immediate danger of just running out of money. SNAP, which you might know as food stamps, has a little more of a cushion, but even that is still really vulnerable if a shutdown drags on for too long. And this quote from the National WIC Association, wow, it just really drives home how urgent this is. For the moms and young kids who depend on this program, a shutdown isn't just some political fight on TV. No way. In just a matter of days, it becomes a direct threat to their family's well-being.
What about our national parks? Well, for all the nature lovers out there, the situation is kind of a big question mark. The plan, it seems, is to keep the gates open where they can, but without the staff. No rangers, no maintenance crews. And if that sounds like a bad idea, it is. We saw this back in 2019, didn't we? It can lead to overflowing trash cans, bathrooms that are just unusable, and even real damage to these incredible, irreplaceable places.
Okay, so we've talked about services, but beyond all that, there is a very real, very tangible human cost. This isn't just about inconvenience. A shutdown directly hits the wallets and livelihoods of hundreds of thousands of Americans who work for the federal government.
And to really put that in perspective, just take one state, Alaska. It has one of the highest percentages of federal workers in the country. We're talking about 15,000 people right there. 15,000 people who are either sent home without pay or worse, forced to keep working with absolutely no idea when their next paycheck is going to show up. And believe me, that financial reality hits, and it hits fast. Just because of how pay cycles work, active duty military members, they're looking at missing their first full paycheck on October 15th. And for many of their civilian counterparts, it's just a week or so later, on October 24th. That's not a hypothetical. That's a hard date on the calendar.
And here's where it gets really crazy. This creates a really stark contrast, right? Because of how the Constitution is written, members of Congress and the president, they keep getting paid. Their salaries are guaranteed. Meanwhile, the very same people we've labeled essential, our active duty military, our air traffic controllers, Coast Guard members, they have to show up to work every single day without pay until this whole thing is over.
So, what does this all add up to? Let's step back and just quickly run through the key takeaways here.
Okay, so here's the bottom line. First, essential services do keep running, but, and this is a big one, the people running them are not getting paid on time. Second, critical safety net programs, especially WIC, are at immediate risk, threatening food for families. Third, this has a real painful human cost. Federal workers and military members are missing paychecks, creating huge financial hardship. And finally, the impact is just widespread. From your passport application to your favorite national park, the effects are felt all across the country.
And all of this leaves us with one final, really crucial question to think about. We've talked about the immediate stuff, right? The missed paychecks, the delayed services. But what about the long-term costs? What does it do to public trust when the government just stops? What does it do to the morale of all those dedicated public servants? And what's the lasting damage to the country's ability to just function? That's the deeper question that sticks around long after the news cycle moves on.